Today, I'm here with Nein yet again in Diablo Immortal talking about the lore, specifically the Dark Exile. What is up, my friends? My name is Echo, and again, I am very excited to have Nein back on the channel talking more about Diablo lore. You guys have been letting me know in the comments that you are excited about this series, that you look forward to it every Monday, and well, that's why we're continuing on bringing it to you. Make sure you sub with the bell on so you don't miss any of the videos right here featuring Diablo Immortal. Nein, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good as always. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing great. Like I said to everyone else, I'm excited. Why don't we just jump right in, man, and start talking about episode 3, Dark Exile. What's going on?
All right, so as we left off in the last episode, we kind of have this truce, this armistice between the forces of heaven and the forces of hell. And there's 3 key points that we kind of need to go and focus on to see how it kind of impacts the events that happen, centuries afterwards. One, of course, the big one is going to be, the vote to save Sanctuary from the angels, the Anguirus Council. Now, that was really important, and there was a little bit of contention between the 5 leaders. You had Malthael, who is the aspect of wisdom; Tyrael, everybody's favorite, the aspect of justice; Imperius, the aspect of valor. You also had Ithriel, the aspect of fate; and Ariel, the aspect of hope. These 5 archangels kind of constituted the main power base of the high heavens, and their vote would ultimately decide what would happen to Sanctuary. Hell was, being represented solely by Mephisto. He, being the eldest brother, kind of was the de facto leader, and he was speaking for all of Hell, just as himself. And as long as Heaven agreed, the Sanctuary would more or less be spared. Imperius, he looked at the Nephilim as an abomination, that he wanted to go through and destroy all of them. Malthael, who had been troubled ever since the Soul Stone was originally taken by Inarius and Lilith, was very melancholy, and he actually abstained from the vote. Ithriel and Ariel both saw the hope and potential that existed within humanity and how they could be used as a force of good in the later stages of what would be the eternal conflict. And it all basically came down to Tyrael. If Tyrael, voted to destroy the high heavens, the vote would be a stalemate. But Hell's involvement would just eventually lead to the destruction of Sanctuary. Anyways, it would force their hand, and they would have no choice but to kill off humanity to keep them from becoming a weapon. So Imperius was pretty sure that Tyrael would vote alongside him, because the two of them had been like the best of friends, warriors or brothers in arms. But Tyrael shocked everybody by actually voting to save humanity. Tyrael was the one that had found Sanctuary and walked among them for a while in order to go through and learn more about these new beings, these humans, these Nephilim. And actually came to see the potential that existed inside them, just the same as Ithriel and Ariel did. And so it was decided, and the Anguirus Council voted to save Sanctuary, which of course then led to Mephisto and Hell, entering into the agreement that we'll have a hands-off on Sanctuary, and we can all just kind of sit back and see what this grand experiment, how it plays out. One of the other things that we needed to focus on at this point is an event that actually took place before this. It's unknown whether it's hundreds or thousands of years. Angels and demons are immortal, timeless beings. They don't really care about concepts of time and such. But Tyrael's main lieutenant, Iswal, had led an attack on Hell and had inadvertently been captured. Now, during all of this time, all the way up until the events of the discovery of Sanctuary, he had been tortured by Mephisto and Baal and Diablo, and was eventually broken. And he joined the forces of Hell and kind of divulged all of Tyrael's secrets. And then on the other side, the last point is the demons, as represented by Mephisto. They were kind of left in the dark. Mephisto knew, Diablo knew, Baal knew, but then everyone else in Hell, besides those luckless demons that kind of been summoned, by the human mages, nobody knew that Sanctuary really existed or what true potential there was. And so when all of a sudden they're all being summoned into this strange new world and immediately battling the forces of Heaven in a conflict that had kind of been stalled out for a couple thousand years, they were like, what's going on? Like, we don't understand. What's this? Why were you keeping these secrets from us? And so this led to a lot of dissension within the forces of Hell. And then so going from, this armistice that they had went through and put together to keep Sanctuary, as a neutral territory, off limits, no one's going to touch it, no one's going to interfere, the forces of Hell kind of viewed this as a weakness in the rulership. So the three brothers, the greater evils, Baal, Mephisto, and Diablo, were looked at as, you all are weak. And so the four lesser evils, mainly Belial and Asmodan, they eventually were able to convince the two other lesser evils, Dariel and Duriel, to join them in trying to overthrow the three. And so they basically created a civil war that led to endless infightings, massive forces of demons just utterly destroyed. But eventually, the lesser evils were successful in overthrowing the three. Now, one of the Belial and Asmodan were constantly bickering amongst themselves about who should be the new leader, who should take over Hell. And even though that they were successful in overthrowing the three, Hell itself was still in a state of flux. Asmodan had hoped that, well, maybe after we defeat them, we'll throw all the prime evils into this sanctuary that they covet so much, and then that will force the angels to come in and destroy it. Because if the Anguirus Council finds out that the three are just running around freely around Sanctuary, they'll see that their pact is broken, and we can get back to the eternal conflict, which is the whole point of existence. We're just supposed to be fighting. And this is what Asmodan's main goal was. Even though they got the three prime evils and they banished them to the realm of Sanctuary, they immediately just went through and started fighting amongst each other about who is going to rule Hell, who's gonna reign supreme. And so they never actually got their armies together to then go and try and restart the eternal conflict like they had hoped. And during this time, of course, now the three prime evils have been banished to Sanctuary, and they begin to recoalesce their energies and find that they can possess humans very easily now that they're kind of tied to this plane of existence. And they immediately set to work with causing strife, warfare, corrupting humans, and seeing their ultimate plans take shape. The one thing that the lesser evils didn't know when they were going and banishing the three prime evils is that this was their plan all along. When they had captured Iswal and learned Heaven's secrets, they found out about these crystals called soul stones, which were created from shards of the world stone itself. And even though that they were just shards, these relics had an immense amount of power. And since the battles that we had known had been taking place ever since the beginning of time had all been about the rulership of who could control the world stone, now that they found out that there's this little thing that you can go through and kind of tie yourself to the world stone, Primeval thought that, well, if we can have our essence bound inside these soul stones, we might be able to corrupt the world stone and permanently take control of it, so that way Heaven can never get their hands on it again, and we'll be in control now. And we'll have an upper hand in the eternal conflict, and we can, at that point, fully bind the world stone under our control, kind of like what Iswal did during the Sin War. Or not Iswal, but what Inarius did during the Sin War. And so using that knowledge, they created this big plan, so that way they purposely left the lesser evils out of the Sin War, so that way they would have this discontent, and then through a little bit of intrigue and all that, kind of tricked Asmodan into banishing them to Sanctuary, so that way Heaven would get involved in a way that they expected it to. And what ended up happening was Tyrael was the first of the council to find out that the three prime evils had been exiled to Sanctuary. And he knew that if the rest of the angels found out, that they would in fact see this as a violation of their terms, and they would bring the war to Sanctuary and all of humanity would be destroyed. In order to keep that from happening, he decided to keep this discovery a secret. And what he ended up doing was he searched all across the world, and he gathered the best and the brightest from the mage clans, and he formed a group that he would declare as the Horadrim. That is a term that anyone that's familiar with Diablo knows of the Horadrim. It's a great, powerful order of secretive mages that were kind of the best at everything. They had specialists that could go through and manipulate matter, energy, the elements, and all other sorts of things. And it's from these kind of like special forces mages were able to go through and bring the fight to the three primevals. It took them about like 5 years after Tyrael had collected them in order to hunt down the first one, which was Mephisto. Being the eldest of the three, he was also one of the more powerful. And he loved using intrigue and politics and all this other types of stuff, just causing civil wars within country. Envy and hatred were his tools that he used to kind of topple whole cities just like overnight. And he was able to go through and gain control of massive forces when he would possess different national leaders, city leaders, and things. So the Horadrim were forced to raise their own kind of like mercenary army to stand against these forces that Mephisto had put together. But after about 5 years, they were finally able to hunt him down and trap him within his own fortress that he had created off in the eastern regions of Kyrgyzstan. This fortress of bone was kind of defended by an undead army that the Horadrim, had to go and fight against. And it took many days of fighting before they eventually were able to be successful, toppling this fortress of bone, defeating Mephisto, and then trapping his soul within the first of the Soul Stone. They next then spent another year going and hunting down Baal, which they eventually encountered outside of Lut Ghislaine in the deserts of the Aranok. And out there, Baal, he's not subtle. He's the Lord of Destruction, and as befitting his name, it's all just a warfare, bloodshed for him. And so he kind of confronted them openly out in the deserts, and it created a massive battle. He was able to rip the world apart, and they fell down into these subterranean catacombs where they went through and fought them. And then, even though that they were ultimately successful in defeating him, the Soul Stone that was supposed to be his prison had become damaged. And because it was damaged, it was no longer able to act as a full prison to keep his soul. And so at the time, the leader, the mage Talrasha, ended up giving himself in order to kind of act as a sealant to keep his soul imprisoned within what was left of the shards of the Soul Stone. And we'll get a little bit more onto his history in a little bit, because finally, the last one was Diablo. And being the Lord of Fear, he also used, intrigue and subterfuge and such, hopping from host to host to just ensue fear and panic across the entire world. It took them another decade before they were actually able to go through and find him in the wilds of Kinduras. And after a battle that took the better part of a day and almost cost all of the Horadrim their life, they were finally able to beat the youngest of the three and imprison him within a Soul Stone.
You never cease to amaze me with how deep this story goes and how knowledgeable you are on it. Again, that's why you're on this channel doing all of the talking for the series. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We can let you get back to your story now, but just, again, it's unbelievable. Keep going.
All right. And thank you for that. So now you have the three that were going and were all captured, imprisoned inside these Soul Stones. The next thing that the Horadrim had to do was find some way of disposing of them permanently. After they had defeated Mephisto over in Kyrgyzstan, they entrusted his Soul Stone to a little nascent religion that was known as the Zakarum. These were kind of a little fledgling religion that was just kind of like getting its feet wet. They were growing in size, but they seemed to be on the side of good, praising their concept that they knew as the light. The Horadrim entrusted them, thinking that, well, this holy order would be more than capable of being able to, deal with the kind of lingering effects of Mephisto's hatred, and that they should be able to keep this safe and never allowing him to escape the Soul Stone. The second, of course, being Baal. Since they had to go and give up their leader Talrasha in order to complete this ritual, to use himself as almost like a sealant to keep Baal inside the Soul Stone, they knew that they couldn't leave him under the care or guidance of anyone. Because if you see this person that's now kind of given his life to be endlessly tormented, battling one of the lords of hell for the rest of eternity, anyone would take pity on them and try to rescue him. So they had to bury him out in the middle of the desert, far away from where anyone might come across him. And so in the middle of the desert, they erected a giant tomb full of traps and arcane wards, so that way anyone that discovered it would never be able to get into the center and disrupt the ritual itself. And just to be on the safe side, they also constructed a bunch of mirror tombs that might lead any would-be treasure seeker or any of the minions of Baal to try and go through and find him. And of course, the final Soul Stone, Diablo, near where they beat him, they buried it in a series of catacombs and erected a monastery on top of it, which would later become a little sleepy town called Tristram. And it's from there, the last of the Horadrim Order themselves watched over Diablo's Soul Stone for the next couple of decades before the Order itself eventually disbanded and kind of faded off into history. It's from there that, for the next 300 years, no one really heard anything from the three primevals. Tyrael, after Diablo was in prison, came down to the Horadrim and thanked them for their service and said, you guys are it. This is the reason why we spared humanity. You all show the potential of truly being a force for good. With little outside help, you were able to go through and defeat the three primevals, three of the most powerful, most evilest entities in all of creation, and you did it yourselves. Tyrael just provided the prisons for them. And is from there, in Tyrael's eyes, that they had won their place in existence through this kind of selfless act in order to save all of humanity from a darker fate. Whether it being the primevals taking over, the angels finding out, and then kind of going through and destroying Sanctuary, that they had kind of earned their place amongst everyone else in creation.
Well, that's pretty deep and intense, and it's pretty cool to see that the battles within the same evil. We have all of hell fighting for that control, which is probably a lot of the story that people don't know.
Yeah, and this is kind of the summarized version. We're leaving out the little minutia, but yeah, this is kind of the bigger overarching point. And then from here, this pretty much leaves us off, right at the doorstep of Diablo 1 and 2, because they happen right after one another.
Okay, and so I think you went in really good depth explaining all of that here today. Now, we can't expect every single detail because that's literally encyclopedias of books and things you've read. I know that it goes deep, but I think you're doing actually a perfect job giving us the roundabout story, enough detail to understand what's going on and to spark interest. And if people are that much more interested, they can go check out your podcast and they can go and dive into those depths. And can you tell everyone a little bit about that podcast?
Oh, sure. My podcast is called The Westmarch Workshop. I just celebrated the 6-year anniversary of the show. I'm coming up on episode 200 here shortly. Kind of, I'll go into lore and stuff like that, which is, my favorite aspect of the games, but also just general news and talking about developer updates and just my thoughts on what I see. I've been following the development of the Diablo games for, damn near a decade now, and so it's something that is always interesting.
Yeah, so I guess you can call yourself an expert in the space. Nearly a decade of time invested.
Just a little bit.
Well, guys, I'm going to be linking his podcast and his Twitter account as well below, and I urge you to go check him out. He's a great guy, and he tells some great Diablo story, and like he said, not only that, he'll fill you in on what's going on for updates, news, and such else. Nein, any last things you want to say before we head out for the day?
No, that's it. I look forward to going through and bringing us right up to date on where we leave off for Immortal, and just sharing the love of lore with the greater community.
Sharing the love of lore. You couldn't have put it any better. Remember, guys, every Monday we are here with another lore video for you. Make sure you subscribe with the bell rung so you don't miss it. Follow us both on Twitter. Links to everything are in the description. And remember, Nein did join my Discord server. He's in the server, in the Diablo section, actually talking with you guys from watching the videos. So come on through, join the server. Again, that's linked down below. But we're out of here for today. Nein, thanks so much for coming down, my friend. Always appreciate you.
All right, thanks for having me.
No problem. Before you go, guys, check out the rest of the series you could find right here. We're out of here. Have a great day and be good.